What's going on, guys? Welcome back to FGC Philosophy, the fighting game community philosophy. Lately, I've been working a lot in esports, so it's hard to say just FGC. It's more like just gaming and competitive gaming philosophy. But nonetheless, I am Tavian Napier, aka a philosopher. I am here to talk about some topics for myself. One of the things that's important to mention is that I'm big on self-development, personal improvement, whatever you want to call it, right? So that is normally where I'm at, the mind space that I'm at, and also the experiences. In the past, I've worked a lot in gaming, competitive gaming, game journalism, and now I still do, but just for myself. So I can actually say that I run a business with esports. I do coaching, I do production and streaming, I do commentary, and I'm very, very grateful, and I still can't process it. I'm not rich. I am not making a boatload of money by any means. I'm still figuring this out. I'm still learning. I have a long, long way to go. But I am at least kind of here. I am able to somewhat sustain myself with my business. I work for a university, a college, and a couple of after-school programs. You know, I'm getting different contracts and things, but now I'm sort of refining. I'm in a different process. I'm in a different phase of my life. Before I was figuring things out, and now I was trying everything, right? I was trying a whole bunch of different stuff to figure out what sticks, what I like. And I'm 34 now, something like that. I'm 35, I think. And no, I'm 34. And I still have a long way to go. But I know what I don't want to do a lot better, even though sometimes I still have to do those things. That's just life. But when I have the opportunity to delegate, I am actively working towards those things. One of the biggest words right now for me is scalability, taking everything that I'm working on in the different areas of my life and scaling those things up. So that's where I'm at now, and that's sort of the main topic of this conversation. I want to actually just do an update with the main topics of just the events that I've done, things that I'm working on in the world of esports, and where I want to go with those things. So that's coming up. That's what I'm going to be talking about. I recently helped run the production for a Valorant tournament, a Collegiate invitational. I also helped with some high school stuff. I've helped with streaming Rocket League tournaments for a high school league. I'm coaching 2 Rocket League teams, or I will be coaching 2 once the new semester starts. So with that said, I want to get into some of the more personal topics first, the personal things that I'm trying to work on talking about regularly as I do these topics. I think the first one, this isn't actually a bullet point on my list, but I just thought about this as I was reading my show notes, and it should have been on here. And that's just, what's the status of this podcast? You know, I feel like there are people who listen to this and they don't know when a new episode's coming out, and that's on me, right? That's the accountability portion of it. And what my goal is to upload once a week. But where I'm at now is I'm basically uploading every 2 weeks-ish. That's what I want to start doing. That's the bare minimum for me. That's going to allow me to not be pissed off at myself, to put it bluntly. I take this podcast very seriously, and lately, just since the pandemic and a little bit before, my content has just been in such a non-consistent format. You know, it hasn't been uploaded consistently, and that's been driving me crazy. Like every single week, that's just in the back of my mind, like I gotta upload something. And I've thought several times about stopping this podcast, and the most realistic thing is I'm probably gonna rename this podcast or start a new one at some point, because I like doing this. I think this is a great idea, and a phrase that I thought about recently is accountability through content. And I don't think I've heard that anywhere before, but I love that idea. I've thought about it for a long time. That's why I wanted to start doing YouTube videos in the first place, to sort of document my journey. And I don't think I've mastered the documentation of my journey just yet. I'm still trying to figure that out, and that's sort of part of the conversation that I'm going to get to in the main topic. But for me now, I just want to say my goal right now is 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks I want to upload an episode. I don't think it's always going to be fighting game related, because I'll be honest, I haven't been super glued to fighting games. I've been more so paying attention to a lot of content creation and a lot of esports related topics, because I'm working with Rocket League. That's where my main paycheck is coming from, is coaching Rocket League for 2 different teams, and then also doing production for Rocket League tournaments for a different company. So that's where most of my attention has gone. And when I try to play fighting games, I try to play fighting games when I can. I try to look at tournaments, but I'm so behind on a lot of the fighting game stuff. So I'm going to try to update you guys when I can. But right now, I don't really feel like talking about fighting games, so I'm not going to. Maybe some will be sprinkled in there somewhere. But for right now, let's get on to the next topic. And that one is actually one that I want to keep on doing. This is sort of a motivation for me to talk about this, but it's, what am I listening to right now? As I've talked about before, I'm partnered with Audible, and I have a deal that I offer on my website, tavianapier.com. The website is kind of but don't worry about that. But if you go to tvnapier.com/audible, you actually get a free month and I believe 2 free books with Audible. And there's no obligation. You can close it down. But that's aside. That's an aside. What I want to talk about is what am I listening to? I am still listening to The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. I've been sort of just listening to the different chapters and really internalizing them because every single episode, and I've listened to this book like 5 times now. I would say this is my 5th listen through, whatever you want to call that. And I always get something new. And I'm on, let me check real quick.
Earlier, when an earthquake.
I'm currently on chapter 12, which is called Using Adversity. And I feel like every episode he talks about different topics. You know, he really goes into his process, his experience. And I love how you get to see this person who's, you know, he's had some privileges, sure. You know, he's because of the work that he put in at a young age, he was able to kind of reap the benefits to some extent. But at the same time, everyone has their own personal struggles, and his just might have been more elevated. But he definitely talks about how his struggles affected him and how he worked through those struggles, how he tries to take his adversity and put it towards other areas of his life. Like I said before, he's a grandmaster of chess, one of the youngest next to Robbie Fischer in America, but also moved over to Tai Chi Chuan push hands and became a grandmaster or world master of that as well, and won several tournaments, you know, world tournaments, not just national or local or anything like that, world tournaments against people where the origins of that martial art are also competing, right? That's a huge deal. You know, this American kid, this American nerd who grew up playing chess, switched to martial arts, and I just love that. But I also am trying to supplement my personal development stuff with more nonfiction, and I recently bought the first book for Harry Potter. So the Sorcerer Stone or Philosopher's Stone, depending on, you know, where you're from. I know I have some UK listeners and some overseas listeners, so shouts out to you guys. But yeah, I started listening to that. I'm on like chapter 3 or 4. Obviously, this is an older book, so spoilers isn't a big deal. But, you know, I gotta say, I've never read the books. So you gotta understand, I've only seen the movies. I've watched every movie at least 3 times now, but most of them I probably watch more than that. We watch it every single year for the most part. We're working through it now. And, you know, the Dursleys, if you're a Harry Potter fan, then you know who the Dursleys are. Harry Potter's godparents, the guardians, I'll call them. Because technically Sirius Black is a godparent. But anyways, I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd. And I've been listening to it. It's been voiced by Jim Dale, who I don't know if he actually has a UK accent or if he's just acting it. But either way, he does different voices, and I really appreciate that. And man, the Dursleys are they're so terrible. They're so terrible. They do a really good job of setting up the world that Harry Potter is living in and really helping you feel how bad of a situation that Harry Potter's in, so that when he finally meets Hagrid and all these letters start coming in, it's just, you feel the excitement with him. I gotta say, I know J.K. Rowling is a controversial figure right now. I'm not going to get into the politics of that, but I gotta say, she writes books very well. She treats people like trash. Like, she treats Harry Potter like trash by the Dursleys, you know? I'm only on like the 3rd or 4th chapter, so he just got to Diagon Alley. He's buying all his supplies right now. He's probably going to run into, I don't know if he runs into Malfoy at the bookstore like he does in the movie or what, but I'm curious to see just the differences. I like Harry Potter lore and Harry Potter theories and stuff like that. So I recommend it if you haven't listened to the books or read the books yet, and you do have Audible or you're thinking about getting Audible, check that out because I really think it's worth it. The main other topic right now is my personal goals. Personal/business goals, and that's getting organized. I have to acknowledge, or I have been acknowledging, that I'm a very unorganized person, but I'm also very meticulous. And there's also the issue that I get bored or distracted very easily. I'm not sure exactly what. It's a little bit of both. And so a lot of times I don't give in to my meticulous tendencies, and as such, my preparation usually just, I do it at the last minute, right? And I've gotten really good at that. I thought about this recently where someone invited me to do a talk, and I've been putting it off, thinking about it, right? It was in my head, but nothing was written. And there is this weird headspace that I get into where for months I'll be thinking about things and not realizing that I'm just like planning in my head. And then the day of or the night of, I'll be like, okay, let's just put it all down and get it organized. And I do that. And very rarely is anyone willing to say that it's not good or up to par. But I think the issue for me No, let me correct myself. I know the issue for me is that my standards tend to be a lot higher than the people that are paying me. And that puts me in a weird spot where what I'm giving them, they are satisfied with. And I get my money, the transaction is done. But for me personally, I am kind of a perfectionist, and I don't feel satisfied that I did a good job. Like that I did a great job. I kind of combined two words there. I combined good and great. I don't feel like I'm satisfied with my work. I got the paycheck, I got the transaction, great, but that's not why I do what I do. If I did, I could work in any other industry like I've been doing for most of my life. You know, I've worked in sales, I've worked in factory work, I've worked in I guess HR. I've worked in a lot of different regions of things and delivery, but I want to do this because I know I'm good at it and I like it and I'm passionate about it, and I want my fingerprint, the thing that I put out, right? You know, like when people make video games or movies, their name is on that product. When it is a bad product or when the general public doesn't like it, and I don't really care about what other people think about me, but at the same time, everyone has to acknowledge that their reputation affects their money. It affects how people want to do transactions with you. So even if the person that's paying for it is happy with what they got, there's a chance that other people might not be satisfied with it, and that name is still tied to me. So there's a lot of different reasons why I want to get more organized so that I can make a better product. Because at this point, I think I've learned enough about skills to know how to do them and improve on them, but I don't think I'm that great at planning. So what I've been trying to do is use a tool. I've been using several tools. So I have like a notebook that is like a whiteboard, and I can upload it pretty easily in almost like a PDF format. So that's been helping me here and there, because I can write and scribble, and it's not always just lined paper. I think lined paper limits how I think about things, because sometimes I want to doodle and draw ideas out or put a grid or whatever I want to do. So this is just like a bunch of lightly dotted paper that's on erasable ink. You use erasable ink, and you can also use like a paper. You can use water and just a microfiber cloth to clean it off at the end of the day or whenever you find new inspiration, whatever. But on top of that, I've been using a tool called Trello, and this isn't a plug for them or anything like that. I'm not partnered with them. It's just I've been really diving deep into Trello because I think it does everything that I need. Now, I've been mainly using Trello for my multiple jobs and keeping track of everything, primarily at the university that I'm working with, because I'm transitioning from one position to another, but I also fear that if I don't train people well enough or prepare them well enough for when I'm not there, I'm still going to get called in, and I'm not always going to be available. And again, my name is attached to some of these productions and events, and if it goes bad because I'm not there, then I'm going to be bothered by it, even if other people aren't. So, as such, I've been trying to prepare people and create a workflow that other people can use and make sure that there's accountability, because there's no real like structure right now. I'm basically creating the structure, the workflow for this project, for the production of these events. There are other people who have helped plan them, but there's no hard documentation on any of this. So what I'm trying to do is to document a workflow. I have a manual that I drafted up, and that's in the process of getting edited at some point. So I already have a boring manual that people can look at to reference for training and things. But what we need, I believe, is a workflow. So I tried to create that. And as I started doing that, and this is something I'd used over years, I started digging deep into researching, how to do it better, looking at YouTube tutorials and other templates. And I think that I want to try using it to organize other areas of my life, like making my content. So right now I'm actually looking at my bullet points on Trello. I wrote it down. I have a checklist, so I have all the checklists and everything. So I'm sort of putting my money where my mouth is and practicing this stuff. That's the main personal points for me, is trying to get organized, right? This involves my sleeping habits, my health habits, eating. I think the first thing is I need to organize and plan what I want to do. And as such, I can start to actually see my progress, take a tally of what I've done or what I haven't done, and really see everything that I'm trying to do or what I want to do or that I have done. I've always known that this is something that I want, like a visual, whether it be like in a video game form, like a quest from an RPG, like a quest list or something like that. And I still can do that in this app if I wanted to. But mainly it's just making it as basic and simple as possible, not overcomplicating anything, and just seeing what I need to do and making it actionable and measurable, like the SMART goals, right? We talked about that in the past. SMART goals, I think, are going to be very, very helpful for me. So as I get better, I'll probably check in on this topic and talk about it a little bit more. I know this isn't the most glamorous of topics, but I think it's incredibly important as we grow. I have a hard time of looking back sometimes and seeing where I am now versus where I've been, from sleeping in my car in California to now having contracts with multiple educational programs from from high school to university level. That's kind of nuts to think about, that people come to me as an expert in esports and help them do these things. I don't say that to be braggadocious, but it's really, really hard for me to acknowledge some of my bigger goals. And I think I sort of got messed up emotionally or mentally during the pandemic when I got laid off and tried to figure out, oh, okay, what am I going to do? And I'm susceptible to depression. And plus, I'm also very susceptible to SADD, seasonal affective disorder or something. I basically, when there's no sun, I get depressed. I'm part Jamaican. I need sun. I need some heat. I'm not saying I always like heat, preferably less humidity, but I have noticed from however many years I've lived here, I think maybe 10 years I've lived in Michigan now, I'm not a big fan of living in Michigan personally in terms of the weather. The weather here is kind of trash. Snow is nice for my son. I'm glad he gets enjoyment out of it, but for me personally, I'm over it. I miss 70-degree weather. I miss San Diego, all that kind of good stuff. So I'm looking over to make sure my wife isn't in the room right now. But we talked about this several times, so that's kind of the joke, is that I like San Diego because of the weather, but the prices are just way too high there. But yeah, so I think if anything else, before we move on to the next topic, is make sure that you are acknowledging your goals, the things that you've done, whether it be just family related or career related or health related. Just acknowledge yourself. Don't get into the habit of just only acknowledging the things that you do wrong, because that can get kind of toxic if you're trying to be really objective about things all the time and not really noticing the good. So with that in mind, I think it's time to get into the main topic. All right, so on to the first topic that I want to talk about, and it's all going to be just things I'm working on in the esports industry. I just want to kind of process and talk about everything that I've worked on so far. So the most recent thing that I can think of is we hosted a tournament for a game called Valorant. If you're not familiar, it's basically a 5 versus 5 strategic shooter where one team has a bomb and has to plant it, the other team has to defend the location. Pretty straightforward. It's a little bit more fantastical because they have magical powers, but it's basically Counter-Strike with magical powers, if you know what that game is. If you know what Counter-Strike is, you probably already know what Valorant is in the first place, but nonetheless, I digress. So basically what we did was the first week we had online playoffs, and our local team at the university played in the arena, and we practiced our production, and I did some training. So this sort of ties into multiple topics because I'm running the production in the stream while also trying to teach students about the production. So lighting, sound. The most intensive thing I think is just the we call it the vMix machine, or the Big Red and Big Blue. It's where we run all of our production. It's where we use the software to switch from scene to scene and update the stream and everything like that. And I definitely realized about myself, because normally I'm sitting up there kind of running it or directing somebody else. I've had to learn how to let go of control of everything and let other people do it and just be a director. I'm relearning that, I should say, because I did that before the pandemic, and it's just been a year and a half before I've done this. So now we're in a situation where we are scaling up and we're getting more students involved and making sure that they're getting first-hand experience. So essentially what I do is I set up everything to make it as easy as possible. So I take the program and I make a bunch of buttons. I program a bunch of buttons into it to make it to where they switch from scene to scene, overlays pop up. A bunch of cool things happen that all they have to do is press a button. Behind the scenes, I'm watching a bunch of tutorials and Googling things and figuring out how this program works and adding assets, and having one of our other students who basically plans a lot of the events have him make assets as well. And then I plop those in there and I organize it and I make sure it's easy to use. And then from there, we just make sure that the production goes well. And it was pretty fun. It was really nice. It was a good experience. And it was a great warm up for the in-person finals that we did, where 4 teams came in. There were 2 MSU teams, Michigan State University teams. They have multiple teams because they just have so many students interested in the program. And then Purdue wound up taking the whole entire thing. I think our team got second. I might have gotten third. I'm not sure. I got to think about that now that I think about it. But I think our team got third. But nonetheless, it was really fun. It seemed like a lot of people had a great time. There was only one instance where we had, I guess we use the term Karen or male Karen, where someone put a mask on their head instead of putting it on their face. But that was very small and minute compared to the whole entire event. So it was really cool to see that happening, all the teams coming through, having fun, playing in person, running the production. The stream was popping. I looked at the analytics and those were looking really good for minimal marketing. We have basically no marketing team, or at least none on staff. Just the club and individuals like myself making posts and sharing it out there. But that was like a 2-week process. We learned a lot about making sure that we plan further in advance, about our standards of tournaments, figuring out a lot of technological issues and such. We definitely had a lot of refamiliarization to work on, and it was really cool that we were able to do that. Other events that we had run in that arena was less production, but just more so event organizing. Was a Smash Bros tournament, like a weekly Smash Bros tournament for a high school that our local Parks and Rec organization ran, and we just helped facilitate it and give advice and things of that nature. And that was kind of hectic at first, but week after week it got more and more organized and more streamlined. I wish I could have been more involved, but I was still figuring out my other obligations as a coach and running tournaments online and such, so I had to leave earlier than I would have liked to get things done. But that experience helped me to some extent, learn how to manage my time. That's a huge chunk of this, right? All the events, all the work that I'm doing right now in esports, because I'm working for myself, I have to really learn how to manage my time. I have to really keep track of it because, I'm logging my hours and everything. It's kind of like clocking in and clocking out, but there's no, only one of my jobs has an actual like time thing that I like a timesheet that I stamp and clock in. Otherwise I have to just document it and then send it off, right? And say, hey, these are the hours that I worked. Some people actually just send a legit invoice and say, hey, this is how much hours I worked, and this is how much you're charging me. Just like a literal invoice versus like a spreadsheet or something like that. So it varies from organization to organization, and it's keeping track of all these things. Definitely a challenge that I'm trying to work on, right? We talked about planning in the introduction, and that definitely helps with a lot of this, where I keep myself organized. I have everything in different folders. The same thing works for running events and planning events. The better you plan your events, the simpler you make it, but also the more detail you get into it, the more prepared you're going to be, and the more you can prepare others for those events, the better you can train people. And as I said before, that's sort of where I'm at with scaling up, and the Valorant tournament was a good example of that, because if we don't have enough people to help, then we can only facilitate so many people in the arena, and we have to keep that in check. We can only do so many things before our bandwidth gets used up. So I really want to make sure I hammer that idea home. One of the other things that was really interesting was hosting the varsity tryouts for the Rocket League team. That was at first stressful. I was really nervous. I have imposter syndrome, so I'm always thinking I'm not good enough. And I know at Western, I've been coaching at different colleges, but Western, they have a really high caliber of players. I'm not throwing shade at anybody else that I coach or anything like that, but it's a big school. So the pool of players that they can get is really high, and their club has been established for years. Since I worked there, they had the Rocket League club, and they've been going strong. I knew some of the players that were trying out, and I knew the expectation of what kind of players. And these are like champs, champ, grand champ, maybe an SSL. If you know Rocket League rankings, that's like the 3 highest ranks you can get in the game. Basically, the third and second highest are the most likely to find, and then Supersonic Legend is the highest rank you can get, and that's a little bit more rare. For obvious reasons, it's the highest rank you can get. But yeah, I ran the tryouts. It worked smoothly. I found a captain that I can really depend on, I think. And the caliber of players are just ridiculous. I'm excited to see these players, because something that I have to talk about with coaching is that me personally, one of my strengths has always been taking someone who's good at something and making them better, right? What I've been doing for the most part is working with high schools and colleges where they're maybe average or below average, and getting them to be average or above average. And that's not the same thing. That's very, very rewarding. It's very, very exciting to see. But what personally excites me, and what I think I'm personally best at, is taking someone who's already good, or taking a team that's already good, and making them better than they already are. And this, I think, is that phase of my life where finally I get a team that they already know how to play the game. It's just, how do we make you even better than your competition? And that's the challenge that I'm going to be faced with coming up. So I'm partly nervous. I'm partly excited. I picked 6 players so that we can do in-house scrims and everything. And my employer was okay with that. So that's really exciting to be able to do that. They're already working together. I technically can't work with them until the new semester starts. Final season is happening. I think finals might be done this week. By the time this is uploaded, finals should be done at the university that I'm working at. But it's exciting. It's exciting to be able to do that. This is something that I've thought about for a long time. I've always wanted to work for like a big organization like, you know, C9 or Team Liquid or something like that. But I think I personally still have a ways to go before I have that level of credibility. And even if not to other people, to myself. I want to prove it to myself. So I think the university and collegiate levels, that's exactly where I'm at. You know, I feel like I've made a lot of progress with the team I'm working with already at the college, at the Albion College, not the university. In the sense that all the players, except for one, were basically like gold or lower when they started, and all of them are now diamond and are still improving. And that's even with a student who already plays sports and has other obligations, was able to get to the diamond rank with splitting their time between school, sports, and Rocket League. So I feel really vindicated. I feel very validated. I feel validated that the process that I'm having with these students, even though I don't feel like it's very organized and structured, it's very much in the moment, looking at where they are and figuring out things. It's going well, and we're developing trust, we're developing team chemistry, we're working on communication in the game, working on giving feedback, when to give feedback, how to process your emotions and make sure that you're not getting tilted or upset in the middle of a match and your performance just drops. Sometimes these players talk about not playing consistently, and we try to work on those issues. So I've got a lot of experience from that school. Also just I've already coached 2 other Rocket League teams in the past for high schools. Plus I ran the summer camp where we coached Rocket League and Overwatch during our curriculum in 2019, I think it was 2019. I think it was 2019 because we were going to do it again in 2020. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm very excited, very nervous. The main thing that I have to go back to is just, you know, planning out my ideas, planning out what I want, getting the big vision, and then working on a plan to get there and adjusting as needed. I think if anything, if there's any takeaway to take from this, is that my process has been eclectic, and I have started off in a weird spot, right? Let me just backtrack a little bit, and then I'll hammer home the point. So I want to share, you know, my journey. I've talked about that before, but in relevance to this, I've had multiple different interests throughout my life, and everything that I've learned before has led up to this. Now, there was a point in my life where I felt like I had wasted several years of my life just doing nothing. You know, I played a lot of video games, I wasted a lot of my time, and I'm not saying that this applies to everybody, but I wound up taking all of my experiences and turning it into something. So there was a point where, yeah, the reality was I didn't know what I wanted, and as such, a lot of my experience meant nothing. But as I started to figure out who I was, what I wanted, what I was about, and how I wanted to get there, I realized that I could take my experience and utilize that. You know, I worked at GameStop for 6 years, and for a long time, I didn't understand what I could have used from that other than just I had a job for 6 years. But in that time, I learned, it was one of my first jobs where I was working with customers. Everything else was food service, and I was a cook. So this was my first sales job, and I learned a lot about psychology. I learned a lot about confidence. I was too shy to talk to people before that. But I wanted this job so bad that I forced myself to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So learning how to talk to people, learning how to sell them things that they don't know anything about, learning how to educate people on topics they don't know anything about, going above and beyond for people, learning how to build my own fan base, right? By the time I had left the GameStop in Alabama, I had people who would travel 45 minutes past other GameStops just to see me because they knew that my reviews on games were worthwhile and had validity to them. And I took a lot of pride in that, to the point to where I couldn't go anywhere in the city of Huntsville or Madison where people couldn't recognize me because I worked at GameStop. People would like go over to me, and it was kind of annoying. I felt like a celebrity, and this is when I realized really young where I'm like, I don't think I like celebrityness. I don't think I like the idea of people recognizing my face before I recognize theirs. But I still, you know, continue to work on my craft. But nonetheless, you know, that's one example of many where I went to school for game design, and I was like, I want to be a life coach. How the hell am I supposed to use a degree in life coaching? But I'll tell you what, that bachelor's degree opened up several doors for me. And I do find that because of my knowledge of game mechanics, of how they work, it's easier for me to click. So even if I can't personally do a mechanic in a game or a strategy or something, it is not very hard for me to wrap my head around it, or to talk about it, or to strategize around it. So that's not useless. I worked in game reviews, or game journalism. I wrote for several different websites and worked on writing. While I don't really write that much right now, I do find that those skills help me out. There's so many different things that I could talk about along the way. I don't want to talk about every single example right now. Maybe in another video we can kind of break that down in more depth. But for now, it's just a matter of, I took my experiences, I really reflected on them, and I utilized a lot of those things. Even if they weren't gaming related, I learned how to make those relevant to me in some way. And if it wasn't relevant, then I just, no big deal. I don't have to stress about the fact that I wasted some time working on something. If anything else, I learned that I didn't like that. And that's okay too. Sometimes learning what you don't like is as important as knowing what you do like. Because when you know what you don't want to do, what you don't like, and you still take efforts to work on those things, like, let me think of something, running, right? Right now, it is wintertime, and I am very susceptible to getting depressed because of just the seasons, and I don't even know all the reasons, right? So there's a couple options, right? I'm looking into therapy for myself. That's obviously one I think is very important to work on. I've had coaching friends, and I think I have some techniques on my own, but nonetheless, you can always have external help with those topics. But I also am going to go start running, right? I found all my gear, I found my face mask, and I find that challenging myself in this cold weather, even though I don't like doing it, it makes me feel better in the long run. So that's one of those examples where you continue to work on things that you don't want to do. But sometimes, as you work on them and you learn about them and you master them, you can delegate that. Now, I can't delegate running. I can't have somebody else run for me, but I can have somebody else run a tournament for me. I can have somebody else run the stream for me. I can have somebody else do my editing for me. But because I've spent so much time understanding and developing those skills on my own, I know how to tell them what to do. I know how to tell them what is good quality and what is bad quality and how to get to good quality. I have worked for people in the past for like game development and things where they like, I don't like this, but I don't know why. Fix it. And that is incredibly vague. That is, oh man, I'll tell you what, I could rant about that for a good minute. Working in game development, I had one guy who said I wanted to look more cartoony. And well, no, he wasn't even talking to me. He was talking to the art director, and the art director was ranting to me because cartoony is such a broad term that like we don't even know what to do. And there's like very little direction. And then we just like make something that looks like as a kid drew it. And he's like, that's great. And everyone's just like, your level of quality is lower than ours. This is the game director telling us these things, and everyone has their own vision, and who are we to say this is not our vision? But at the same time, it's like we got to put our name on this, right? I don't know if I want to put my name on this if you're having kid scribbles on a game that's supposed to be taken serious. So it's a digression from my point, but I just needed to rant about that real fast. Let me circle back here. What I'm trying to get at is that I've had a lot of moving pieces in my life. I've done a lot of different things. As you've seen here, I'm running productions for tournaments, running streams. I'm also doing coaching. I have someone reaching out to me about doing a seminar on commentating right now, which I don't know if I'm going to do or not just yet. I have people reaching out to me to review the products, and I think I just turned someone down because they're like, you got to give me a 5-star review. And I'm in a position where I don't need a free camera for a 5-star review, right? And I don't want to brag saying this, but it's important to understand yourself. I know what I'm about, and I know what I want, and I care more about my integrity than I do about getting a free camera. So I'm not going to give somebody a 5-star review. And I told them this already. I already mentioned this to them. I'm saying, hey, if you're willing to let me give an honest review, I'll take a free camera, but I'm not going to give you a 5-star if I don't think it's a 5-star. That's just not the way it works. So, they're talking about that, and I don't know where they're going to stand on that, but nonetheless, it's important to understand who you are, what you are about, and that helps you in so many different ways, right? I kind of feel like I'm all over the place here, but I want to hammer the fact that, one, the time you spend on things isn't always wasted. You can waste time doing things. I'm not saying just to sit there and play video games and all of a sudden magically you're going to have a job in gaming or esports. That's not what I'm saying, so don't misinterpret that. But two, you also need to learn to acknowledge your successes as well as acknowledging things that you can improve on without stressing yourself out about it. I tend to stress myself out about things, but I also try very hard to acknowledge the things that I've worked on. And then also you got to sometimes do things you don't want to do until you can get somebody else to do them, if that's a viable option. Like I said before, running, you can't have somebody else do your exercise for you. But with other things, you can delegate that if you have the resources to do so. But you got to get to a point to where you can scale before you should scale. So yeah, I'd love to know what you guys thought about these topics. If this made sense for you guys. I love the interaction. I love the conversations that I have with people. If you have any questions or topics that you want me to cover, make sure you do reach out to me. Of course, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I don't do a great job of plugging myself and my content. I don't think But make sure you guys do subscribe to this podcast. I've basically been focusing more on podcasting than YouTube right now. I am planning for YouTube in the future, but right now I really just want to focus on the audio because it's easier to edit, it's easier to put out there, it's easier to get meetings and things like that, and I don't have to worry about a lot of video editing and making it look nice and adding all the memes and crap, whatever. So make sure you guys do me the huge favor of subscribing, sharing this out if you think it's a good episode, and of course reaching out to me, whether it be via the comments. If you have commented on my podcast and I haven't responded, reach out to me on social media. Links will be down in the description. I want to know if I'm getting the notifications because I try to look through those, but I don't know. I think it like changes people's names for privacy purposes. So I want to double check on that one. So that said, thank you guys so much for their continued support. Of course, have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year, all that good stuff. Whatever it is, I don't care if you're PC, if you're not PC, happy whatever it is the hell you celebrate. Have a great one, and I will see you all in the next one.